That is what is projected in today's culture. And now we have children with multiple mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters, blended families with complex dynamics that we still have not figured out how to deal with. Fatherless sons and daughters repeating the cycle based on their own experiences of what is right, or at least what is acceptable. This is the reality. But what will you do to shift this reality? Now, we also have various media outlets, including advertisements and billboards, that is public imaging. Especially here in St. Martin, I noticed that there are a lot of billboards, as was mentioned earlier, that I don't know how you can live with it on a daily basis, seeing those images, having to travel back and forth to school, to work. I don't know how you can deal with it. I don't know how you can deal with it. I just don't know. But I will say that for those images that are in public spaces, especially on or near government property, that may be something that you can look into legislating to make sure that within certain areas of schools or of government property, certain images aren't allowed. So example of these ads include those for beer. And I was actually talking to my husband, thank you, who's helping me right now with the slides, appreciate your help, about these images of beer campaigns. And they utilize women in bikinis. And I don't know if you've actually looked at it, but it's very suggestive. And I told him, I said, you see the beer bottle is placed in a certain area, and that's not coincidental. In the psyche of even a man or a woman, you see that, and it draws you to the image of sex and alcohol, and it merges those two. And of course, a disrespect of women. All in one shot right there. So now on to television shows. Next slide. Next one. Thank you. So does anyone here know the hit series such as Scandal? Just a show of hands. She said we all know that TV show. Scandal, okay. How about the next one? And one more. How about How to Get Away with Murder? Show of hands? Okay. You don't have to raise your hands for this, but think about if you regularly watch these shows. Just think about it for a second. Don't raise your hand. I don't want anyone to say, oh, she or he watches those shows religiously. Forgive me for that, but now, these two shows in particular, they show images of strong black figures, strong black women who are professionally accomplished. One, the show Scandal, is a crisis manager handling cases for national leaders in the United States and even the President of the United States. In the other TV show, she's a successful attorney who's an authority on the law. And as it implies, she's pretty good with allowing people to get away with murder. Okay. So these women are portrayed as educationally and professionally accomplished. But they're also sexually promiscuous. They are emotionally broken. And they're confused. Do you agree with that? Okay. So do you see the pattern in both the media and the music's role in suggesting an appealing culture for women and girls to subscribe to? These are our role models. If you don't have someone in your home, in your life, in your school, amongst your family to look up to, this is who you see. And you see the education, you see the professional success status, but what about everything else behind closed doors? Again, the promiscuity, emotional brokenness. So these two television series are actually written and produced by a Black American woman named Shonda Rhimes. I heard you say Shonda. Shonda Rhimes. And in 2007, she was named by Time magazine as one of the, quote, 100 people who shape the world. So think about that for a moment. Shaping the world. What are we doing in our own communities to reshape the world from this? We must each take a stand in whatever our sphere of influence may be. And it starts with one person at a time, building confidence and creating a vision so that we will not be lost and swayed by every image or every character on a TV show that may look appealing at the onset, but if you dig down deeper, not someone that you want to become, not an image that you want to portray, or a spirit that you want to say is aligned with yours. In our news, there's overwhelming focus on the negative, and in movies, the portrayal of women fit the same oversexed and unstable description as the themes in music and television. Another show of hands, who here likes action movies such as 007, James Bond? Dun, 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 dun. No? No? Okay. I do, I'll admit it, I do. It was just last weekend, I think we went to go see Spectre. Thank you. We went to go see Spectre. So I enjoy it, action and suspense, great. But just the other day, I was thinking about this presentation and how women appear in these movies, such as female characters in the 007 movies. So the Bond girls. Next slide here. So this image is actually taken from one of the older Bond movies, and you'll see Grace Jones, who I believe was the first black woman to play in a Bond movie. Now look at that image. Fully clothed, suited up, James Bond. I don't know what Grace Jones is wearing in that image. I have no clue. But think about this, the first portrayal of a black woman in a Bond movie. That's it. So in these, I want to stick with Bond for a little bit. In these Bond movies, we see that the leading ladies, they're first led with sex appeal. They're portrayed in the films as helpless victims, or they're figures in need of James Bond support. They need his protection, and they need his love. They're also portrayed as unrestrained, and they give in quickly to their emotions almost instantly. Let me ask, is James Bond really so irresistible that he intimately relates to every woman he encounters? Or are we just seeing more promotion, again, of the unrealistic portrayal of women? The media promotes and rewards the images of women, that help to perpetuate violence, abuse, and a lack of confidence that's needed to leave a violent and abusive relationship. In 2001, actress Halle Berry won an Oscar, an Academy Award, for Best Actress for the film Monsters Ball. She's actually the only woman of color to receive this honor as Best Actress. So in Monsters Ball, she portrays a poor woman who is physically and verbally abusive. She's a physically and verbally abusive mother toward her overweight son, and her son eventually dies tragically. So after a few encounters with a stranger who also is mourning the loss of his son, the movie synopsis quotes, "They drown their grief with alcohol and have sex." You can look it up. Go look for a synopsis of Monsters Ball. That's exactly what it says. They drown their grief with alcohol and have sex. So this is the first and only time a black woman has won an Oscar for Best Actress. And this was her role. Again, do you see the combination of various abuses on display here? Next. So one of the short-term impacts of music and media is this false understanding of self for both girls and women. Girls may look to define themselves by their attributes and the positive and negative reactions that they receive from peers, from friends, from the opposite sex. Unfortunately, both young males and older males. The so-called stroking of the ego can provide a temporary high or a feel-good effect for girls. It's the dopamine rushing to the brain. It creates feelings of love, of acceptance. And most people, you want to feel loved and acceptance. But this type of acceptance is based on others' opinions. So at this point, it just takes a young lady to start associating with crowds with the same superficial mindset, and you'll see the introduction of other elements of the same culture: drugs, alcohol, and promiscuity. It goes hand in hand with instances of violence, rape, and domestic abuse, as people are under influence of substances. These connections cannot be taken for granted in helping to solve violence and abuse in our community. Now, some of the long-term impacts. The moments of sorrow and pain that come from violence and abuse, it adds up moment by moment to decades. And unfortunately, after this time, it becomes a lifestyle. And we can become accustomed to the pain. In fact, we can feel empty without the pain. In the long term, this is why it's necessary to break this cyclical nature of how we allow media and music to impact the lifestyles of women and girls. False ideas of valuing the body as the only priority affects the mind. Girls may be more focused on appearance as opposed to studying and learning in school. They may be focused on sex and sexuality, increasing sexual behaviors, and the increased risk of developing life-threatening diseases and the occurrence of early pregnancy. Priorities of these girls now shift. Education is no longer paramount. There's a child to take care of. There's health to take care of. So we can see out of this, a long-term impact can be the development of a culture of uneducated women with multiple children, possibly multiple fathers, a lack of support for self, for children, and a lack of opportunity for future advancement. This creates broken families, broken societies, and the cyclical nature of poverty. And in poverty, we know that there's dependence on others to provide, whether it's a government system, friends, family, boyfriend, a new man of the day, whoever it is. And this is not the way that women and girls were created to be. This position of vulnerability also increases the likelihood of abusive and violent situations. And if faced with them, the likelihood of accepting the abuse or feeling helpless to get out of the abusive situation. There's oppression in not being able to change your circumstance. There may be an increase, again, in sex work, which in and of itself can be a demeaning profession, so to speak, and very dangerous line of work for girls and women. And again, this is all to provide sustenance, to be able to maintain on a daily basis. So women, if we don't break this cycle, our daughters, our sons, they will perpetuate it. Future generations to come will face the same problem. Daughters with no respect or acting beyond their years, don't just say, oh, they'll get over it. It's just a phase. No. Action starts at the moment. For younger girls, proper guidance is essential because youth, I'd argue, even up until the age of 20, maybe even 25, are still in a developmental stage. A girl is still trying to figure out her place, developing self-confidence. The music and media impact creates a warped view of body and mind. The signs, again, present itself in depression. What I've seen in Anguilla, an increase of cutting, trying to commit suicide amongst young girls. Also, low self-esteem. A lot of times people said, no, this isn't an issue with women of color, but it is in terms of plastic surgery, implants. You know, wanting to have larger body parts because that's what you see as being appealing or sexy. Or in some cases, that's what your significant other tells you you need in order to be sexy. So these extremes, it leads to a place of loneliness, solitude, or in some other cases, acting out, always needing attention. So you have to know these signs to know how to help girls. It's important to understand that at the heart, there must be a focus on promoting young girls' understanding of themselves with their unique talents, gifts, and purposes. Now, the effects on older individuals can be similar, but the effects can be deadlier, as the time is short for reform. Older individuals may also display feelings of inadequacy or a need to redefine themselves based on what's trending in society. Have you ever seen someone beyond their years, I'll put it that way, for certain types of clothing? Yes? Okay. And you say, I guess the first step would say, well, let me take you shopping, just to make sure that may not be the issue. But otherwise, it may just be having to keep up with the trend, wanting to feel like the images that you see are considered sexy. You know, so this can be a problem for older women as well. So in redefining themselves, they may redefine themselves to what society finds appealing. And again, passing on these same ideas to younger generations. In relation to sexual behaviors, there's an increased risk of incurable diseases, such as HIV and AIDS, among older men and women, especially among women. You may have heard in the United States, there was a study showing that some of the highest rates of HIV infections, of those that were diagnosed, of those that we know about, are among elderly in nursing homes. And you may wonder, how does this happen? Again, it's a new day and age. The things that we have to worry about now, they didn't have to worry about in their 20s or 30s. So the simple idea of using a condom doesn't come to mind. So as you see, next one. There are some serious challenges facing us. But as I conclude, I want you to take away the belief that change is not too difficult. And don't believe that it will not happen. It can happen. There are steps that we can take to be more preventative and to cushion the impact of music and media in our societies. We do have a carnival society that unfortunately it equates to short clothing or little clothing, again, the environment of alcohol as the norm, and music that sends bad messages. The genre of soca music, for some reason, doesn't sit well with me. I have yet to find a song that is in some way not suggesting sex. Please tell me if there's one out there. My email will be at the end. Send me one if you find one. I'm very serious. Because all of this is perpetuating these situations. But as you see I have up here, it's not our culture. Saying all of this leads to violence, yes it does, but violence against women is not our culture. We need to seriously consider this impact and understand it doesn't have to be here. It doesn't have to be in our region even. So do we change the culture? That would help. But realistically, what we need to do is educate more, and we need to set examples. As parents, we need to get involved in our children's lives. Know what your child or your children are doing with social media, both girls and boys. Know what they're listening to, what they're watching, And again, who they look up to, who are their role models. As you've noticed through this presentation, the culture of violence has become a role model, and this is what we need to change. I want to applaud and encourage the Women's Desk to continue fulfilling your main objective, which is to strengthen the position of women in the community of St. Martin. It will be the strengthening of the resolve of women to create positive change that will make a lasting impact. Next one. Do not underestimate the male voice. And this was said a few times tonight. The male voice is important to stand up against abuse of women. It is more impactful for a father to teach his son how to respect and treat women. It is more impactful for another man to tell his friend that he should not abuse his girlfriend or wife. Men must take a stand to ensure the respect of women. I would add that the youth voice is also essential. Pay attention to your girls and boys. Have conversations with them about what's happening in their lives. I know of teen girls as young as 14 who have boyfriends who physically abuse them. They've gone to school with a black eye and said what? I fell down the steps, I bumped into a door. And all of their friends know what's happening. But they don't feel comfortable talking to their parents. Why? It's one particular situation. The young lady said, I'm not allowed to have a boyfriend. So she has a boyfriend. He's physically abusing her, and she can't go to her parents because she knows she's not allowed to have a boyfriend, but yet she's accepting it. So think about how real this fear and intimidation is. We must ensure empowerment and development activities for our girls. This is what will strengthen their resolve. We must give them an outlet and an alternative to getting involved in street life. Such activities can include youth parliaments, drama, as we've seen tonight, theater, dance, singing. All of these positive expressions of what you're feeling. All of these positive expressions of love and life, of joy, of community. This is what's really needed. So in closing, I want to emphasize the importance of reaching out to vulnerable populations, to those who feel marginalized, and to those who are oppressed. They come in all ages, genders, backgrounds, and ethnic origins. Remember that we are all affected by violence and abuse. Whether you can think of a situation now, whether you can think of someone you know, maybe even yourself, we're all affected by violence and abuse in one shape or form. But the positive takeaway is that our girls and our women should not have to suffer in silence. We must seek to discover who we are and why we were created. With this sense of purpose, we can choose to embrace the positive elements in our lives. So yes, we must live with the music culture, we must live with the media culture, but we do not have to embrace it in our lives. We do not have to let the influence affect us, affect our friends, our family, or our loved ones. So I encourage you, please take this message away with you. Remember that each of us has a role to play. I appreciate you listening, I appreciate your participation, and I hope that we can really put a dent in this problem that's ruining our societies and our families. Thank you very much. And I've put up there my contact information. It's there it is.